Hi everyone, Pickled Dill here, with just a quick announcement before we get into today's video. This is going to be a longer video than usual, since many of you reacted favourably towards last week's mid-season finale of What If Ash Was Brandon's Son. I will also be putting up a community poll to see whether you want to continue with this sort of length, though on a bi-weekly basis, so be sure to check that out in my community tab. And if you're not a subscriber, now would be a great time to subscribe so you can have input on these sorts of things with how the channel is moving forward. Currently, only about 35% of you are subscribed, but I'd love to get that number up because it costs you nothing and really helps out me and the channel. But enough shameless begging, let's get on to the story. We find our heroes in Saffron City. After a long journey, they have finally made it, and in this moment Ash, AJ and Red all have the Saffron Gym in their minds, though for vastly different reasons. Despite it having been years since he was here, Red remembers the way to the gym, and so guides the boys. He feels no need to stop in at the Pokemon Center, as only Saw has battled since their last checkup, though what happened with Damien can hardly be considered a battle, even if it has left his conscience in turmoil. But Red is not given much time to think, since the trio soon arrive at the gym, and when the champ lays eyes on it, he can't help but be a little put off by how different it is from last time. Though the base architecture of the gym is the same, the marble covering the building looks more weathered, rugged even, and from the entrance hangs a faded wooden sign that reads, "Fighting Spirit Gym." Seeming to share his perturbation, Ash asks Red if this really is an official gym, with the older man shrugging that it used to be. However, here AJ cuts in, saying he's read about this place, the gym leader Anthony is a personal role model of his, and that he can't wait to meet him. This causes Red to express surprise that they finally replaced Sabrina, while Ash is more surprised that AJ can read. As the two boys begin to squabble, a tall muscular jogger and his Hitmonchan pass them by, then stop and jog in place, with the jogger asking if they're here to challenge the gym. Ash confidently says that he is, and the man beams that he likes that fighting spirit, introducing himself as Anthony, the gym leader. All three travelers shake his hand, and Anthony beckons them to join him inside. This too is unlike what Red remembers, with the long corridor still being the same, but when he looks through the many doors lining the walkway, he sees that where once psychic acolytes trained to hone their abilities, now waits another gym equipment are being operated by humans and Pokemon alike, likely trying to build up their bodies in the same way that Sabrina's apprentices did with their minds. AJ is enamored by this setup, and so talks excitedly with Anthony, who is happy to give him a tour. Veering suddenly through a door, Ash, Red and AJ find themselves in a room with spinning multi-tiered wooden martial arts dummies. Proudly, Anthony tells them that this is one of his favourite warm-ups, then orders Hitmonchan to assume the position. With a nod, Hitmonchan jogs into the centre of the dummies, and then Anthony turns to AJ, asking if he'd like to help him give this little demonstration. AJ's eyes light up, and he says that he'd love to, and so Anthony leads him over to a panel with a bunch of levers and tells AJ to keep flicking them up and down at his heart's content, but to be sure to keep the pattern random, since he doesn't want the boy to take it easy on him. AJ opens his mouth to ask what Anthony means, but the big man has already joined Hitmonchan in the centre of the room and nods at AJ to start. AJ does as he was bid, and immediately the dummies come to life, moving around on tracks and spinning in various directions at once. Several dummies glide towards Anthony and Hitmonchan, but the duo smile, going back to back and batting the first wave back with a flurry of punches and kicks. They then split up, with Anthony heading further into the fray, fighting off two dummies at once. Hitmonchan, on the other hand, stays in place and uses a powerful punch to send half a dozen dummies ricocheting off each other and away from it. A few of these dummies are sent spinning Anthony's way, and the gym leader laughs that his old friend is cheeky, but surely doesn't think that will be enough to stop him. He then leaps up, kicking off dummy to dummy before landing with a roll in front of Hitmonchan, and inexplicably begins to box with it. The Pokemon responds in kind, and AJ asks if he should stop messing with the levers, but Anthony tells him to go even faster, and so AJ obeys, causing the two combatants to occasionally duck and weave around each other to strike a dummy when it gets too close, or else use hook blows to drive their opponents into oncoming dummies. After a few minutes of this display, with neither trainer nor Pokemon showing any real sign of stopping, a girl's voice critically cuts in, demanding if Anthony, who she calls Dad, is really training or just showing off for his new friends. Anthony grins that he supposes now is as good a time as any to bow out, and so he and Hitmonchan leap out of the combat zone, then hug, slapping each other on the back in congratulation for another well-fought bout. Anthony then at last turns his attention to the girl, introducing her to his guests as Rebecca, his daughter, and the true brains behind the gym. Ash, Red, and AJ greet her warmly, and Rebecca asks if they're new students, but Red shakes his head, saying that the boys are just here to challenge for the badge. This makes AJ a little awkward, and he admits that though he admires Anthony, he won't be having a gym battle here. Ash asks why not, and AJ says that he made a promise that he'd only take on the gym challenge after 100 straight wins, and Master Red broke his streak, so he'll just have to earn another 100 wins, then come back to face Anthony. More curious than critical, Red asks his green-haired disciple why he's so set on that course, and AJ explains that he wants to make sure he's 100% ready, since maybe if he beats all the gyms on his first try, then the league might offer him an official gym leader position, which is his dream. Despite his own past dismissal of the position, Red genuinely encourages AJ to pursue that goal with his whole heart, with Ash adding his own encouragement, and Anthony clapping him on the back, saying that if he doesn't want to have a gym battle right now, he's welcome to use any of their training facilities, since he seems like the sort of guy who'd appreciate rigorous training. AJ thanks Anthony profusely, and gushes that he does, telling the gym leader about his old informal gym, and the workout tent he had set up behind it with weights and even a swimming pool. He then goes on to show Anthony the training harness he designed for Sandshrew, all of which the gym leader finds fascinating. Meanwhile, Ash and Pikachu wander into the center of the training area, and begin examining the dummies with an air of curiosity. Hitmonchan sees this, and so assuming they want to train, jogs over to the control panel and tries to help out by pulling the levers. At once, the dummies spring to life, with one right in front of Ash swinging one of its rack arms at Pikachu. The electric rodent spots the incoming danger, and so using its speed training, jumps out of the way. Unfortunately, Ash is a bit slow on the uptake, and so only manages to turn his head in time to get hit squarely in the face. This sends our hero stumbling backwards, until a low sweep from another dummy knocks his feet out from under him, and he winds up sprawled out on his back. Dodging between a few more swinging arms, Pikachu rushes to Ash's side with a concerned cry of Pika-Pee, and this at last gets the others' attention, with Rebecca snapping at Hitmonchan to stop the training. Shamefacedly, Hitmonchan steps away from the levers, and at once the dummies fall still, allowing Red and Anthony to run in and check on Ash. Red asks if Ash is okay, to which his protege nods, saying that next time he'll just have to do better, an answer which makes Red smile as he pulls the boy to his feet. Anthony then lightly chides that this setup was designed for his personal training, so it might be a bit out of the boys' league, but Ash refuses to accept this, telling the gym leader that he never runs away from a challenge, so if it's alright with Anthony, he'd like to try again. Anthony grins that he knew he had the right read on this kid from the start, and so says Ash is welcome to make use of any of their equipment in preparation for their battle tonight. Ash is a bit surprised that Anthony wants to have a gym battle at night, but the gym leader says that it'll give Ash time to get ready, since he wants to face him at his best. Ash shrugs that he guesses this makes sense, and so Anthony leaves with Hitmonchan, telling the guests that if they need anything, they can just ask him or Rebecca. However, before Rebecca can leave, Red stops her, asking if she could tell him how her father came to be the gym leader, since last time he was here, the gym was run by a woman named Sabrina, and he's curious if she knows her. Rebecca shakes her head that she never met the woman, and that her father only became gym leader a few years ago after winning a fighting type tournament called the P1 Grand Prix near Celadon City. Following that win, he was scouted by the Pokemon Association, who had him take the aptitude test, which he was able to pass, and so was given charge of the Saffron Gym, which at the time had fallen into disarray under the mismanagement of multiple interim leaders. Since then, she has worked alongside her father to keep the gym up and running, and thanks to their hard work, the Saffron Gym is finally getting the respect it deserves again. Red thanks Rebecca for telling him all that, saying that after seeing it up close, the gym looks just as good as it did in its heyday, and praising her and her father's efforts. He then tells his two apprentices to stay here and train while he goes to make a few calls. AJ salutes, while Ash asks why he can't come with him, to which Red breezily replies that it would ruin the surprise for what he has in store for them, though, in truth, this is only half the reason. When the champ is gone, Ash asks Rebecca if she can operate the dummy machine for him and his Pokemon again, with AJ saying that he wants to join in as well. Rebecca says she will, though she'll build up more gradually than Hitmonchan did, which both boys agree is probably a good idea. Ash and AJ then each bring out their Sandshrew, with Ash also bringing out Clefairy from its bowl, while AJ does the same with Charmander. Pikachu is the last to join them, hopping down from Ash's shoulder, and so the trainers, along with their Pokemon, make their way into the training area. When they are ready, Rebecca begins pulling the levers and the dummies come alive. Copying Anthony's earlier moves, Ash and AJ begin striking the dummies as they come closer, and so their Pokemon try to copy them. Unfortunately, this doesn't go super well for Pikachu, who doesn't use its arms or legs much in combat, so even though it has the speed to avoid incoming attacks, it can do little to repel them beyond Quick Attack, which requires it to slam its head at high speed into solid wood. Unsurprisingly, after a few of these, the little electric type gets disorientated, and a dummy swing from behind catches it off guard and sends it flying out of the ring. Ash calls out for Pikachu, but AJ snaps at him to stay focused, thrusting an arm out to save Ash from a blow that could have broken his nose. Ash thanks his friend, and so returns the favor by kicking a low hanging arm, which was about to sweep AJ's feet. The boys then go back to back like Anthony and Hitmonchan, ready to get serious. Rebecca, being very familiar with this sort of attitude, registers the change in the two young men, and so speeds up the dummies, causing more of them to come at the group at higher speeds. This proves too much for poor Charmander, who catches a swinging arm to the gut and is sent backwards into the hard wooden base of another dummy, where it crumples in a heap. AJ tells Charmander to get back up, and though it is the same command Ash has seen the green-haired boy give Sandshrew several times, there is less strictness here, more like he is encouraging it rather than demanding. Charmander recognizes this and staggers to its feet, but is swiftly smacked in the back of the head by another spinning arm, which startles the little fire lizard, causing it to let out a little flamethrower. This causes the nearest wooden dummy to catch fire, and as the two Sandshrew use Sand Attack to put it out before any serious damage can be done, AJ returns Charmander to its ball, thinking it might be safest for everyone if it were to take a breather. This leaves just Ash, AJ, both Sandshrew, and most surprisingly, Clefairy. The little fairy type is actually holding its own quite well, using a flurry of well-placed wake-up slaps to keep the horde of dummies from overrunning it. Ash praises his newest capture and receives a thump on the back of the head from one of the dummies he was meant to be sparring with, but nonetheless, he is pleased, feeling immense pride in his Pokemon. From the doorway, Anthony, who seems to have returned, calls out that he likes Clefairy's spunk, so Ash should use it in their battle tonight, and when Ash asks Clefairy if it wants to have its gym debut here, the fairy type gives him a thumbs up. It is evening when Red returns to the gym, and what he finds is a sight so comical but also earnest that he isn't sure quite how to react. In a different training room from the one Red left him in, Ash is holding a large punching bag, while his Clefairy is hammering it with wake-up slaps, all the while balancing precariously on a stack of folded towels for height. As a result, the little fairy type has to twist and sway like a surfer to keep it from falling, which gives Red an idea for a new training regiment, but that is a thought for another time. And so, as the bell rings signaling trainer and Pokemon to stop, Red enters, watching as Clefairy leaps into Ash's arms, and they embrace without a care in the world. At least here Red knows how to feel, and that is nostalgic, but with a bittersweet edge. Clearing his throat, the champ finally gets Ash's attention and asks the young man if he's ready for his battle. Ash nods that he is, and so Red follows up by asking where AJ is. Ash shrugs, saying last he saw of him, he was going to help Anthony with something, before saying that the green-haired boy has been showing off for the gym leader all day, so he, Ash, had retreated to do some real training. This makes Red chuckle and say that if AJ's preoccupied, then why don't they go get some dinner before the match? Ash's stomach growls its agreement, with Pikachu and Clefairy each taking a seat on either shoulder and voicing their pleasure with the idea as well. Ash and his Pokemon soon find themselves in a small ramen shop advertising battle noodles, which Red tells him are supposedly the best ramen in all of Kanto. Ash asks how he knows this, and Red reveals that Blue recommended this place during their call today. This intrigues Ash, and he asks the champ if he can tell him what that call was about yet, but Red shakes his head, merely saying he was making arrangements, and they will be seeing Blue again soon. Ash grumbles this probably means seeing Gary as well, which Red confirms, saying that it'll be very curious to monitor Gary's growth since they last saw him. Ash asks what Red means, and the champ says that as Blue's cousin and Professor Oak's grandson, Gary has a lot of natural potential. That much was obvious from watching him and Ash battle, but he's probably also under a lot of pressure to live up to that Oak name. Since it's clear he won't settle for mediocrity, he only has two choices: excel to heights that none of them can even imagine, or crash, burn, and live with the shame of not being who everyone wants him to be. When Red details this second option, there is a hint of regret in his voice. Though Ash misses it entirely, his attention is instead focused on a strange new feeling, sort of like he feels sympathy for Gary. Our young hero admits that he never really thought of it that way, and he always just took Gary for an arrogant jerk, but Red smiles that no one is just one thing, and perhaps when they all meet up, the two boys can discuss it themselves and come to understand each other a little better. This piece of sage advice is then capped off with the rich scent of ramen, as two steaming bowls are placed in front of Ash and Red, and a third is placed beside them on the floor for Pikachu, Clefairy, and Sandshrew. Ash asks if Red's Pokemon want to also come out and eat, but the champ says that he made sure they were fed before he came back to the gym, smiling internally at the care Ash shows for all Pokemon, not just his own. The ramen is delicious, and it takes the duo very little time to finish their bowls, with Ash exclaiming that he now knows why they're called battle noodles, since after a meal that good, he feels like he could win any battle. Red chuckles that he hopes Ash is right, since it's just about time for his battle with Anthony. This makes Ash pump his fist and tell his Pokemon to come on, before charging out the door with them at his heels. Still in the restaurant, Red shakes his head that though Ash has plenty of spirit, he could do with better manners, and so covers their tab along with a sizable tip, before joining his protege on the main street. Entering the gym for the third time today, Red finds Rebecca standing by the door, though it's immediately clear she is waiting for Ash. She tells him that her father is ready for their battle, and offers to take him to the ring if he's ready. Ash beams that he is, and so Rebecca leads him and Red down the corridor to the room at the very back. None of the renovations this gym has undergone shock Red quite as much as what he sees as he enters the battlefield, where once the room had marble pillars, burning torches, and an overwhelming sense of regal menace. Now it seems just like an ordinary boxing gym, with walls of unpainted brick, a few punching bags around the edges, and the sweaty musk of exertion permeating the air. At the center of the room is a battlefield, or more accurately, a boxing ring, where Anthony stands waiting with Hitmonchan at his side. He greets Ash warmly, asking if he's got that spunky Clefairy with him, and the boy grins that he does, and they're both raring to go. Anthony beams at this, and so leaps out of the ring, telling Hitmonchan that it knows what to do. Ash meanwhile fishes Clefairy's ball from his belt, and hurls it into the ring. When the fairy type appears, he prances around a little in excitement, before fixing Hitmonchan with a steely glare. On the sidelines, AJ approaches Red and asks if Ash's Clefairy is always such a weirdo, to which the older man replies that from what Ash has told him, it likes to play mind games and jokes, so that little display was most likely an attempt to unnerve Hitmonchan. If this is true, Hitmonchan gives no sign of being put off in the slightest, and so when the starting bell rings, it approaches Clefairy, and on Anthony's command uses Mach Punch. Stunned by the speed of this move, Clefairy is hit square in the face, though it does very little damage thanks to Clefairy being a fairy type. AJ even comments something to that effect, saying it was a good choice on Ash's part to use it, while Red, who can't help but feeling a little like an old geezer, mutters that he was pretty sure in his day, Clefairy were weak to fighting moves, not resistant. Either way, Clefairy staggers back, and then as it fixes Hitmonchan with that steely look again, its fingers begin to glow. From his corner, Ash gasps that he didn't tell Clefairy to use Fissure, but Red corrects him that this isn't Fissure, it's Metronome, meaning the move Clefairy uses next will be completely random. Understanding that this could be a blessing or a curse, Ash holds his breath and watches as Clefairy's fingers stop glowing before it suddenly launches a Dark Pulse at Hitmonchan. However, by using agility, Hitmonchan is easily able to sidestep the attack and close the distance, slamming another Mach Punch into Clefairy's ear. The small pink Pokemon squeals in discomfort at this hit, and AJ yells at Ash to have Clefairy use a Fairy-type move. Ash yells back that he doesn't think Clefairy knows any Fairy-type moves, which makes his two companions face fall, before AJ rises and furiously bellows that Ash seriously went into a battle with a Fighting-type specialist while using a Pokemon that has a type advantage, but didn't think to teach it any moves of that advantageous typing? Ash grumbles that he didn't think of it, alright? But Red yells at them both, telling AJ to stop distracting Ash, and Ash to get his attention back in the ring. Heeding his mentor, Ash whips his head around and sees that while he was distracted, Hitmonchan has gotten off a Mach Punch body blow which has winded Clefairy. Knowing that Metronome is too much of a gamble, Ash calls for Clefairy to show off the fruits of their training with Wake Up Slap. This seems to be exactly what Clefairy was waiting for, and so leaps up and slaps Hitmonchan hard across the face. The fighting type looks a bit nonplussed by this, so Clefairy delivers another across the other cheek, but it's not given a chance for a third, as a sky uppercut to the chin sends Clefairy shooting through the air like a shooting star. With a thump, it hits the canvas, then the ropes, and before it can recover, Hitmonchan leaps in and begins pummeling it with a barrage of comet punches. These seem to actually leave a mark on Clefairy, and so it is too stunned to respond when the barrage stops, allowing Hitmonchan to pick the little fairy type up and toss it into the center of the ring where it lies prone. When it doesn't immediately rise, Anthony begins the 10 count, and Ash gulps, thinking it's all over for Clefairy. But then he sees that though its body is still, its hands aren't. In fact, they are swaying back and forth, and its fingers are glowing. At the literal last second, just as Anthony is about to declare Clefairy knocked out, the glow stops and a rumbling fills the ring. As Clefairy rises with a mischievous grin on its face, a geyser of fiery magma erupts under Hitmonchan, sending it smashing into the roof with enough force and heat to create an impromptu skylight. Cheering that this must have been eruption, Ash calls Clefairy the best, which makes the little pink Pokemon beam before it looks back at the now landed Hitmonchan and sticks its tongue out. Due to the beating Clefairy has taken from the Comet Punch, the attack was not at full strength, but even still it is plain to see that Hitmonchan is worse for wear as it rises to its feet. This time, when Hitmonchan staggers towards Clefairy, it is at a slowed pace, and when it swings its Mach Punch, Clefairy actually manages to deflect the punch with a wake-up slap, before going in for a second, where it drives its backhand into Hitmonchan's ribs. The fighting type then attempts to use this closer range to its advantage by dropping a punch on top of Clefairy's head, but the fairy type is prepared, rolling backwards onto its curly tail, then kicking out at its opponent with both feet. Though this does very little actual damage to Hitmonchan, it allows Clefairy to springboard off and tumble back to its feet, where it attempts to pull off another metronome, but Hitmonchan has grown wise to this trick by now, and so forces itself to close the distance and pummel Clefairy with comet punches, driving it back into the ropes. However, Hitmonchan is done giving Clefairy chances to make a comeback, and so it leaps after it, continuing its comet punch onslaught. Clefairy attempts to counter with more wake-up slaps, and for a moment, these hold the fighting type at bay, but Clefairy is beginning to tire after such an intense fight, while Hitmonchan is an experienced brawler, and so as a result, the pink Pokemon's stamina begins to fail first. This allows Hitmonchan to rain down blow after blow on Clefairy, while it is quite literally on the ropes. Finally, Hitmonchan stops, backing up to prepare a finishing blow, and Clefairy slumps to the ground, its body limp as it stares through the hole Hitmonchan made in the ceiling, up at the moon. There is something about this full moon that fills Clefairy with a sense of wonder, like some dormant part of itself has finally awoken, reigniting its species' connection to the moon, and granting it a piece of the celestial body's power. Unconsciously, Clefairy begins to manifest that power in the form of a small, unstable orb of pink energy. From the sideline, Anthony tells Hitmonchan to watch out since that looks like Moonblast, and if it hits, it's lights out for them. Hitmonchan seems to share this worry, and so when Ash has Clefairy fire the attack, the fighting type darts backwards with agility. However, this proves to be an unnecessary move, since before the orb of light is halfway across the ring, it dissipates into faint pink mist. Clefairy looks discouraged, but Ash urges it to try again, and so as it staggers to its feet, Clefairy consciously draws on the lunar connection this time, and summons another Moonblast, which it throws at Hitmonchan. Like last time, Hitmonchan dances out of the way, and also like last time, the blast fades away before it can hit. This puts the two combatants in a sort of deadlock, since Hitmonchan can no longer get in close due to Moonblast having the potential to knock it out in one hit, while Clefairy cannot land the finishing blow it needs due to the instability of its attack creating a range limit. And so for a while, the battle turns into a game of cat and mouse, with Hitmonchan trying to sneakily gain the ground it needs to finish off Clefairy, while Clefairy tries its hardest to produce a Moonblast that can hit Hitmonchan. Neither attempt is successful, and so it falls to Ash in his unpredictability to break the stalemate. He does this by giving up his advantage and ordering Clefairy to charge in with Wake Up Slap. Anthony assumes that Ash is trying to seize the momentum of the fight and force a resolution, and so tells Hitmonchan to prepare a sky uppercut, which it does, hooking Clefairy in the gut and lifting off its feet in a fierce display of strength. Unfortunately for Anthony, this also brings Clefairy within striking distance of Hitmonchan's head. So on Ash's command, Clefairy creates another Moonblast, but this time instead of firing it clutches the orb of energy close so it won't dissipate and drives into Hitmonchan's head with the force of the already charged slap. This is enough to send Hitmonchan toppling to the mat, while Clefairy lands more gracefully, triggering Hitmonchan's 10 count. Unlike Clefairy, there is no ruse being orchestrated here, so when Anthony reaches 0 with no response from Hitmonchan, he rings the bell and announces that his own Pokemon is unable to battle. In unison, Ash and Clefairy beam as the little fairy type stumbles back to its corner, and Ash lifts it up before wrapping it in a hug. Red and AJ then come over and congratulate Ash and Clefairy, with Anthony soon adding his own praise as he approaches with one of Hitmonchan's arms slung over his shoulder. The two Pokemon then bump fists in mutual respect, while Anthony presents Ash with the Marsh badge and tells him that he deserves it. Ash proudly pins it to his vest, and then asks where he can get his third badge, with Anthony replying they're about equidistant from both Celadon and Vermilion City, both of which have gyms, so either of them would be a good choice. Red concurs, though adds that he has reason to believe Vermilion would be a better choice. Ash trusts his mentor's judgment, so after saying their goodbyes, and AJ promising to come back someday and challenge Anthony himself, the trio begin to make their way south towards Vermilion. Thanks to Red's knowledge of Kanto and its routes, the group were able to stay on the main road, travelling smoothly along Route 6, though even with this advantage it still takes several days to traverse. However, this gives the boys time to train, with sparring matches between Ash and AJ's Pokemon becoming a nightly activity. Both trainers also use this time to train with their newest catchers, those being Clefairy and Charmander. Ash and Clefairy put their focus into mastering Moonblast, and so when not training with AJ, they work with Red's Gyarados, Gyara, to perfect building up and storing energy by watching it use Dragon Rage. Unlike Ash's previous successes with Pikachu and Sandshrew, Clefairy is a willful student, and this slows their progress as the fairy type constantly deviates from Gyara's instructions. This leads to mixed results, with Clefairy's Moonblast remaining ineffective as a ranged attack, continuing to either fizzle out or now sometimes detonate prematurely due to too much power being stored at once. However, simply by practicing making Moonblasts, it has become much more efficient at manifesting cosmic power, turning its improved Moonblast Slap into a powerful finishing move that can be charged up quickly. Meanwhile, AJ puts his focus into improving Charmander's morale and self-esteem, having noticed how withdrawn it has become after the incident with the dummy at Anthony's gym. Naturally, AJ's first instinct is to train even harder with it, since training always perks him up when he feels down, and so he enlists the help of a few of Red's Pokemon to really put him and Charmander through their paces. Being a loyal companion, Charmander puts its heart and soul into this intensive training, but even though its strength is raised as a result, its spirits are not. This baffles AJ, who turns to Red for advice on how to fix this problem, but here Red refuses his second apprentice. He then explains that he knows exactly what AJ must do to help Charmander, but if he tells him, it might wind up doing more harm than good, since it requires a revelation that AJ must have on his own for it to mean anything. Understandably, AJ is rather annoyed by this cryptic answer, so Red takes pity on the boy and decides to give him a hint, telling him to take the rest of the day off and do something fun with Charmander and Sandshrew. AJ agrees, and so Red decides to take the group on a little detour to visit some friends of his, the renowned computer programmer Bill and his wife Daisy, who also happens to be Blue's older sister. Having left their cottage on Route 25 years ago, the couple now reside in a lighthouse overlooking the sea, and are delighted to see Red and his companions. They are especially fascinated to get to know Ash and AJ, wondering what sort of young men could inspire their reclusive friend to not only travel again, but teach, so wind up inviting the trio to spend the night with them so they can get to know them better. All three travellers are happy to accept, and so while Red goes to prepare dinner, having heard from Bill that the cook is on vacation, the pair of lighthouse keepers give the boys and their Pokemon the tour. As they do, they politely inquire about Red, their meeting with him, and what lessons they have gleaned from him, all of which Ash and AJ are happy to answer. As a result of their questioning, and having known Red since he was a boy, Bill quickly comes to the conclusion that both of Red's protégés were chosen because they are reflections of the champion when he was their age. However, here Daisy disagrees, saying that while both do have shades of red, she thinks he chose them because they remind him of his friends. She then explains that AJ reminds her of her brother, with his constant striving to improve and refine his training, while after watching Ash race his Pikachu up and down the halls, she can't help but think of Green with her outgoing personality and that boundless capacity for love, which would often shine through, even when she tried to hide it behind a cool or teasing facade. Red says nothing to either of the researchers' suggestions when the topic comes up over dinner, but Ash notices that this discussion does make him smile. Though, like every conversation that involves the past, there are hints of wistfulness and sorrow mixed into that grin. The evening then rounds out with the group together on the lighthouse balcony, watching a giant Dragonite approach through the mist. In unison, Bill and Daisy call out to it in greeting, and the giant Pokemon returns the cry, before breaking into a warbling song that evokes the image of times long past, and places far away, and of a forlorn soul wandering through them all alone. It is beautiful, heartbreaking, and utterly haunting, and the travellers along with their Pokemon are certain that they will never forget this magical evening. When Dragonite is done with its song, it returns to the depth of the sea fog, and as it goes, AJ asks Bill and Daisy why they haven't tried to catch Dragonite, speculating that its power would be off the charts. But Bill smiles that Dragonite is their friend, and that they don't feel the need to confine their friend to their side, while Daisy adds that Dragonite is a wanderer by nature, and so they must respect its freedom to wander, and trust that in time it will come back to them. Ash and AJ both mutter that they've never thought of it like that, though moments later Ash shrugs that if it were him, he'd still want to catch the Dragonite, while AJ crouches down and asks Sandra and Charmander if they'd be happier if he let them roam like Dragonite. Both Pokemon shake their heads at this, and so AJ wraps the pair in a hug, which makes Red nod approvingly behind the green-haired youth's back. When he catches Daisy's eye, she gives him a knowing look that can only exist between old friends, but Red gives no reply beyond the slightest tip of his cap to thank her and her husband for the good they have done here, whether they realize it or not. The next morning, the trio depart from the lighthouse, thanking Bill and Daisy for their hospitality and promising to visit next time they're in the area. However, their trip is only a short one this time, and by midday, the group reach Vermilion City. Stopping off for lunch while Nurse Joy heals their Pokemon, Red informs Ash that unlike the last few gyms, he knows for certain who the gym leader will be. Ash asks who, and Red tells him that his name is Lieutenant Surge, a tough-as-nails electric specialist who will use his Raichu to try and dominate the fight with overwhelming physical might. Ash says this is fine, since Pikachu hasn't had a chance to have a gym battle yet, so if he uses an electric type too, then it'll all come down to training and trust, and thanks to Red, he and Pikachu have plenty of both. Red can't help but chuckle at this bold declaration, remembering the last time a hothead with a Pikachu picked a fight with Lieutenant Surge. It has been 6 months since Red's championship battle, and the trio of Red, Blue and Green are once more in Vermilion City. Wasting no time, they march into the gym with Red at the head of the party and demand to see Surge. Recognizing all three of them at once, the gym trainers on duty make no attempt to resist, and so lead the group to the back office where Surge is seated with his feet on the desk. When he sees who his guests are, the gym leader jeers that it looks like the Big Bad Baby Brigade have come to pay him a visit and asks what it is they want. Red coldly states that he wants to know where Giovanni is, and this makes Surge guffaw that the cops already questioned him, so he can take it up with them. Fury flashes in the young champion's eyes, and he seethes that they questioned him as a gym leader colleague, not as a member of the Team Rocket Command Triad, and besides, he wouldn't believe a word the lieutenant told the police, since they had no leverage on him. While in contrast, Surge has seen his power firsthand, so unless he wants a beating worse than he got during the Softco raid, he should start talking. Now. On its trainer's shoulder, Pika snarls ferociously, as if begging Red to let him go around with Surge, while at his side, Green gives Red's hand a squeeze, as if trying to tell him that these sorts of threats are unnecessary and unlike him. However, this intimidation tactic seems to be working, as Surge gets up, rising to his full and quite considerable height. He then scoffs that he's not sure if Red's really still got it, suggesting that 6 months as the top dog might have made him soft. So he offers a deal, a 1v1 match between him and the champ. If he wins, the three kids get lost and never bother him again, but if Red wins, he'll tell him everything he knows. Red accepts, and so the four trainers head out into the main battlefield, with Red and Surge taking their places on either side. Surge chooses his Raichu, while Red tells Pika to win this for him. The lieutenant cackles that he's an idiot for not evolving that Pipsqueak already, but that's alright, since he thinks the name Lieutenant Champion Surge has a nice ring to it. Blue interjects that the proper nomenclature would be Champion Lieutenant Surge, but Green scolds him to stop helping the bad guy and cheer for Red. Blue retorts that he's Red's rival, not his cheerleader, but nonetheless, Green can see that he is looking forward to seeing their friend in his first serious battle in months. Surge starts things off, bullishly calling for a takedown, and so Raichu advances on Pika before leaping up and attempting to crush the smaller electric rodent with a belly flop. However, on Red's call of agility, Pika backs up, allowing Raichu to slam into the dirt with a hefty thump. Surge next has his Pokemon bring its bladed tail around to slash at Red's Pikachu, but Pika easily leaps over this as well, earning jeers from Blue and Green that they're not sure who's slower, Surge or his Raichu. Surge yells back at them to shut their traps, but Red waggles a finger that it's a mistake to take his eyes off the battle, since it can all be over in a flash. On this last word, Red snaps his fingers, and responding to a learned command, Pika's body becomes bathed in electricity as it lunges at Raichu. Despite the size difference, Pika has no problem sweeping Raichu off its feet, and they both go crashing into a wall. When they hit the ground, Pika is fine aside from a slight wince in response to the recoil damage, while Raichu is completely unconscious. Surge just looks at the champion, totally shocked, and Red explains that move is called Volt Tackle, and he invented it as a way to remove the limiters on Pika's latent power. Surge doesn't reply for a moment, then inexplicably, he bursts out in laughter, saying that he knew Red was the real deal, but he still wanted to check. Red, Blue and Green are puzzled by this reaction, and so Surge apologizes for fooling them, saying that he'll tell them what he knows about Giovanni, but he's afraid it ain't much. He then states that Giovanni was the most methodical guy he ever met, so of course he had a backup plan for if things went south in Kanto. Red eagerly demands to know what this was, and Surge sighs that he doesn't know the exact details, since the boss was never real big on divulging. All he knows for certain is that it would be launched from a base so secret that only elite members of the team knew of its existence, located somewhere in Johto. Without missing a beat, Red declares that that means he's going to Johto, and he's going to hunt Giovanni down if it's the last thing he does. But before he can make a move, Green joins him on the field, entwining her hand in his again, and urging him to slow down, saying that he's acting rashly, and based on the information of a known enemy. With a frown, Surge points out that before she became Miss Goody Goody, Green was Red's enemy too, but she turned over a new leaf, and so has he, stating that if he hadn't, he'd have vanished already like Giovanni and the other two members of the Command Triad. Green remains unconvinced, but Blue chuckles that Red's already made up his mind, so nothing can change that, and Green should stop wasting her time trying. Green snaps back that if he thinks that, why is he still here? To which Blue shrugs that he came along as backup, in case Red couldn't get the job done, but since that's no longer an issue, he guesses he'll be going. The grandson of Professor Oak then gives his two friends a brief wave and a perfunctory "smell you later" before he is out of the gym. When it's just Red, Green and Lieutenant Surge, Green narrows her eyes and demands to know why they should trust the gym leader when they've got no proof of his reformation beyond his own words. Red has to agree with Green there, and so gives Surge a wordless stare as if challenging him to justify his own trustworthiness. Surge can't help but sweat a little under such an intense look, so with less than his usual full bravado, tells the duo to look at his past actions and they'll see why he can be trusted. He's only ever cared about strength, and so followed Giovanni because he was the strongest. But now that Red's gone and beat him, he's his man through and through, especially after seeing the young champs only getting more powerful with each passing day. Green lets out a little disgusted noise at this justification, but Red tells her that it all checks out, so he thinks they should believe the lieutenant. This response brings Surge back up to his usual level of bluster, and in a display of eagerness to show off his new allegiance, he tells the pair that he'll head back into his office and see if he can find anything else that might help his new boss track down Giovanni. When he is gone, Green turns to Red, and in more of a statement than a question says that he still plans to head straight for Johto, doesn't he? Red nods, and the simple action seems to constrict all the air out of Green's lungs. Looking him dead in the eye, and taking both of his hands in hers, she whispers one last entreaty for him to slow down and think this through, if not for himself, then for her. And then she kisses him. Back in the present, Red finds himself standing in the exact same spot, though now there is no beautiful girl in front of him, and he can feel every long year that has passed since that day. AJ is at his side now, while in front of him stands Ash, calling for Lieutenant Surge to come out and battle him. It does not take long for Surge to show himself, and when he does, Red can't help but think he is not the only one feeling the passage of time. Though still a giant of a man, Lieutenant Surge's muscular frame has become paunchy, his hair is greyed, and wrinkles crease his face. But when he sees Red, the spark of youth comes alive in Surge's eyes, and he bounds over, booming that his favourite baby's all grown up, and now with a couple of babies of his own. Red says that he's glad to see Surge too, and the pair clasp hands. Surge then asks if he's here for the aqua like Blue said on the phone, but Red shakes his head, saying first his young protege Ash wants to have a gym battle with him. Surge grins that he was hoping Red would say that as soon as he saw the Pikachu on that kid's shoulder, and so stomps over to his side of the ring, asking Ash if Red already filled him in on the rules of this gym. Ash says he did, and so Surge grins that it's time to see if Baby Junior can live up to his master. He then brings out Raichu, while Ash tells Pikachu that he's counting on it to net him a win. Pikachu cries its determination and lands in front of its trainer, already on all fours and ready to charge. Like against Red, Surge has Raichu use Takedown, and the hefty electric type throws itself at Pikachu, but the pre-evolution is faster, darting to the side in a manner that shows Red's speed training was not wasted on it. However, Pikachu is caught off guard when Raichu lashes out with its tail, driving the point into Pikachu's soft underbelly and causing it to curl in on itself. It then blasts Pikachu with a powerful Thunderbolt, which cracks the ground around it and sends the little Pokemon flying. But the yellow electric rodent is not willing to go down so soon, and so with a spin, kicks off the air and slams headfirst into Raichu using a quick attack. Now it is Raichu's turn to wince in pain, but Surge has to admit he's a little disappointed, since when he saw Pikachu hurtling at Raichu, he thought it was that move. Ash cocks his head, not sure what Surge is talking about, but Red cuts in, saying he will never teach any Pokemon that move, and that it was a mistake to invent it. This only perplexes Ash further, but Red tells him to just focus on the battle and they can talk later. Surge says that's good advice, and that a wise man once told him to never take his eyes off a battle, since it can be over in a flash. He then snaps his own fingers, and for a moment, Red's stomach tightens, imagining Raichu using Volt Tackle, and the damage it would inflict coming from such a brute. But then, Raichu instead uses the move Flash, blinding Pikachu, and allowing Raichu to use a Mega Punch which sends it tumbling backwards end over end. As Pikachu blinks the spots out of its vision, Raichu lumbers towards its target and attempts another takedown, though at Ash's cry, Pikachu darts away, running half blind, but trusting in its trainer to warn it of danger until it can fully recover its sight. Since Surge knows Raichu can't match Pikachu's pace on foot, he instead calls for a Thunderbolt, and the larger orange electric rodent is happy to obey, letting out another sizzling electrical attack. But this time, Ash tells Pikachu to counter with a Thunderbolt of its own, and when the two attacks collide, Pikachu's is actually stronger, and begins pushing Raichu's back. Surge demands to know how this is possible, since the only Pikachu his Raichu ever lost to was Pika, and that thing was one of a kind. No way this kid's could be just as strong. Red agrees, it's not as strong yet, but certainly has the potential, so if the Lieutenant is holding back at all, he should cut it out and get serious. Surge yells that he is being serious, while Raichu yells because it's being electrocuted thanks to Pikachu's Thunderbolt. When the electric attack stops, Raichu has to shake its head a few times to readjust after that shock, and this gives Pikachu the chance it needs to recover a bit more from Flash, though its vision is still blurry with its long-range vision being practically non-existent. As a result, Pikachu has to rely on Ash for directions when it uses its next quick attack, though thanks to the bond of trust they have built up, the attack strikes true. Surge then calls for another Mega Punch, while Ash's Pikachu retreats speedily, avoiding the hit. He then calls for a Thunderbolt, which Raichu now has to avoid, knowing in a straight electrical clash, it can't win. But the larger electric type lucks out here, since Ash's directions are slightly off, allowing it to avoid getting hit. However, Ash refuses to let his partner down twice, and so when the second Thunderbolt comes, he ensures that it hits Raichu head-on. Spasming a bit, Raichu clambers to its feet, and Surge tells Raichu to break the ground with a body slam, which the orange rodent does, leaping up and hitting the ground hard enough to send cracks rippling through the ring. Pillars made of the battlefield suddenly shoot up from the ground, while at the same time, spontaneous sinkholes begin forming, all of which place the vision-impaired Pikachu at a steep disadvantage. Though its close-range vision is finally returning, the yellow electric type is still struggling to navigate the uneven battlefield, allowing Raichu to gain ground on it and deliver a powerful Mega Kick, which hooks underneath Pikachu and sends it spinning into one of the pillars. Ash calls out for his starter, desperate to know if it's alright, but as the dust settles around it, Pikachu bursts forth with its vision finally restored, and even manages to surprise Raichu with a quick attack, slamming into it and sending it skidding back. Neither Pikachu nor Raichu are looking very good at this point, though Ash doesn't care, telling Pikachu that he's just happy it's okay. Pikachu responds by making a V for victory with its fingers, and Ash nods, seeing that Pikachu wants to win this fight just as much as him, maybe even more, since for it, this is a matter of pride. Not wanting to let his partner down, Ash turns his cap backwards and sets his jaw, declaring to the room at large that it's time for this battle to end. Surge replies that he sure is mouthy for a baby, but he's curious to see if he really has what it takes to back up that talk. Both trainers then call their next attacks, Takedown for Raichu and Quick Attack for Pikachu. On this uneven surface, their speed is roughly equal, but unfortunately for Pikachu, when it pushes down in preparation for the final lunge, the field gives way and a sinkhole opens up under its foot, allowing Raichu to crash into it and drive it back. But Pikachu's not out yet, and so when it crashes into the ground, Ash calls for it to hook its tail into the floor and use that momentum to throw itself back at Raichu. Pikachu obeys, and so slingshots back the way it came, slamming headfirst into Raichu's skull with the force of its own takedown, magnified by momentum. The pair of heads ring like gongs, and it's anyone's guess who will fall first, so both trainers have the same idea, and in unison cry out for a Thunderbolt. At point-blank range, the two attacks collide and explode, sending both Pikachu and Raichu flying to opposite sides of the field, where they hit the wall and fall face first into the dirt. For a moment, it appears that the match has ended in a double knockout, but then as one, Pikachu and Raichu each rise to their feet and lock eyes. Clearly, neither Pokemon is prepared to lose, and so with slow, shambling steps, the two electric types advance on each other, ready to slug this out to the bitter end in the name of their electric type pride. But then, after only 3 steps, Raichu falls, and it doesn't get back up. And with that, Ash and Pikachu are declared the winners, though before the pair can celebrate, Pikachu falls unconscious as well, showing them all how close this fight really was. Nonetheless, as Surge presents Ash with the Thunderbadge, he commends the boy on training his Pikachu well, and on picking up a few tricks from Red. The champ, however, humbly claims that he played no part in this victory, and it was the bond between Ash and Pikachu that won this fight. He then tells Surge that it's time, and the gym leader responds with a brief nod, before trotting out of the gym like a man on a mission. Ash and AJ ask what that was all about, and Red gives them a puckish smile, before telling them to follow him. The pair loyally obey, with Ash cradling the still unconscious Pikachu in his arms, and so Red begins to lead them down the main street and past the Pokemon Center towards the harbour of all places. As he does this, he tells the boys that their journey to the Pokemon League is now halfway done, but even that seemingly lofty goal is just a tiny part of a much bigger world. So, as their mentor, he would be remiss not to expose them to the wider world and all the opportunities to grow that come with it. However, the pair still look confused, and so Red just grins more, and gestures towards a large luxury liner with the name SS Aqua written on the side. He then tells them to join him on the main deck, and he will explain everything. Eager to know what has their mentor acting so strangely, Ash and AJ follow, and to their surprise, find that there seems to be no one else aboard. Nonetheless, as soon as the 3 of them are on board, the ship begins to pull away from the dock. This startles the boys, but Red remains all smiles, and in his most reassuring voice, he tells them to relax, since he already told them he'd explain everything. Weighing it up and coming to the same conclusion that Red has never steered them wrong before, both Ash and AJ look back at their mentor with expressions that say they will listen. This delights Red, and so he continues his spiel from before, declaring that, like he said, the world is a big place with so much to see and do beyond what they are familiar with. So, to celebrate their achievements, the 3 of them are going on a world tour. And that's where we'll leave things. What new and exciting places in Pokemon will our heroes encounter on their world tour? Who will they meet along the way? And how much stronger will they be upon their return? Find out when the journey continues.